Hey guys, it's Alexandra from iloveknots.com. Today I'm going to show you how to make a pumpkin coaster. For this coaster I'm going to be using one of my favorite worsted weight cotton yarns, that is Dishie from WeCrochet or Knit Picks. They're the same company. What I love about this yarn is that it is color fast, which means that I can make these coasters for myself to use, to gift, or to sell. And I know that when they are washed, the colors are not going to fade and bleed. I love that peace of mind. So I am using this brown color, it's called Coffee, and then the orange color is called Clementine. And together with those I'm using an H85mm crochet hook. You can also use Lily Sugar and Cream, Bernat Handicrafter, Hobby Lobby has one called Crafter's Secret Cotton. This cotton yarn is a little bit thinner than Lily Sugar and Cream. It's closer to the thickness of Crafter's Secret Cotton. So if you did make this with Lily Sugar and Cream, your coaster will come out a little bit bigger. Or you could size down to a G6 4.25 or 4mm crochet hook. You could make this adorable pumpkin in any yarn that you have in your stash. Acrylic yarn works for coasters as well, as long as you're not putting anything hot on it. Why we caution not to use cotton yarn or acrylic yarn with hot things is because acrylic yarn is man-made, and so it's basically plastic, a synthetic plastic, and if you put hot things like fresh out of the oven onto it, it can melt and burn you. So if you're just using it with like a cup of coffee, your cup of coffee is not going to get hot enough to melt the acrylic yarn. So you're more than welcome to use Red Heart Super Saver. You could use this as an applique instead of a coaster. You could make it with some thread and it'll come out really cute and tiny, and put it on the front of a card. There are so many things you could do with this coaster, but I am going to make mine with the cotton yarn so I could use it as a coaster. I'm actually going to hang them from my tree for fall, so I'm going to put some twine up here and use them as an ornament because they're kind of stiffer in the cotton yarn, which I like. But let's get to the pattern. Let's make ourselves some pumpkin coasters. Written pattern is going to be at iloveknots.com, and you'll find the link in the description below. I'm going to start with my orange yarn and a slip knot. So I have a tail end over my palm, over my fingers here. I'm going to wrap the yarn around my index finger 2 times, hold the tension with my thumb and my middle finger. Grab the yarn that's in the back, pull it up over the other loop but not off my finger. Then I'll grab the loop that's now on the left, pull it up over the other loop and off my finger. Take my crochet hook, insert it into the loop that's on my finger. Then I will hold the working yarn, the one that's coming from the ball, with my right hand, and the shorter tail end I will pull it with my left hand, and it will tighten up that loop to normal tension. We're going to start with a chain 5. To chain, we yarn over the hook and we pull through the loop. Yarn over, pull through. We want 5, so that's 2. Then we are going to slip stitch to the first chain, so we don't count this loop that's on our hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's our first chain. Insert right into the center there, yarn over, pull through that loop and the loop that's on our hook. We have just slip stitched, joined to form a ring. And we're going to be working inside this center ring. There is a ring on the top. That is not what we're working into. That is the chain that we just joined to. It opens up because this slip knot is not secured yet. We're working into the center ring. So we're going to start with a chain 1. The tail end, we're going to hold it on the back of the chain loop that we're working in, just along the back. So I'm holding it just with my fabric here, and I'm going to crochet over it. So we're going to be working 12 half double crochets into that ring. To work a half double crochet, we yarn over, insert our hook into the center where we're working, yarn over again and pull through. We have 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. We'll do one more, yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, and in this case we have our tail end and the chains. So our hook is inserted through the center of the stitch, and it has both of those things on top of it because we're crocheting over that. Yarn over, pull through, 3 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. Yarn over, insert our hook into the stitch, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops, yarn over, pull through all 3. So that's 3 stitches, and you can tell it's 3 because you count these little V shapes on the top. 1, 2, 3. We want a total of 12. There's my 12 half double crochets. I'm going to slip stitch join to the first stitch, which is right here. If you aren't sure where it is, count backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Insert my hook under both loops of that stitch. Yarn over, pull through that stitch and the loop that's on my hook, and we have just slip stitch joined our round. Now that center hole that we were working into, I'm going to pull up a loop here so I don't lose my stitch. You can hold the fabric with your right hand, take that tail end, initial tail end, and just pull it. And as you pull it, it'll close up that ring. Don't pull too tight because cotton can break. But we're going to sew that closed when we weave in our ends later. I'm gonna for round 2, we're gonna chain 1. We're gonna half double crochet into the first stitch. In this round, we're just simply increasing in half double crochet. I always do my increases differently so that I keep my seam as straight as possible and I don't create extra bulkiness. So most other designs, you'll find that you're working 2 stitches into this first stitch. And I am going to work 2 stitches into this first stitch, but I'm only going to work 1 for now, work around, and work my last one in the same stitch as the first, but it's going to come out over here on the right side of that beginning chain. And that's going to help keep my seam straight. In this coaster, it doesn't really matter because we're only working a few rows or a few rounds, so you're really not going to notice, but this is my seam right here. And I just want to help keep that as straight as possible so it's not traveling off into the distance. That makes it less noticeable. So I'm going to show you how I do that. First, I'm going to start by working just 1 stitch into the first stitch. Now I'm going to work 2 stitches into each other stitch around, working my last one over here, and then we'll work a final stitch to complete that first increase. So 2 half double crochets into the next stitch, 2 half double crochets into the stitch after that, and continue working all the way around, working 2 half double crochets into each stitch around. When you complete your last set of 2 half double crochets over here, you're going to have 23 stitches, and then we'll work a final stitch here in the first stitch. So now I have 23 stitches. there's one stitch open next to you. This is the same stitch as the first. And so I'm going to work my last stitch in there, which is right to the right of the beginning chain and first stitch. Now I have 24 stitches, and I'm going to slip stitch join. Now we're going to start shaping our pumpkin so it gets wider. I'm going to chain 1, single crochet into the first stitch. To single crochet, we insert our hook, yarn over, pull through. We have 2 loops, yarn over, pull through both loops. Then we will half double crochet into the next stitch. Then we will work 2 double crochets into the next stitch. And to work a double crochet, we yarn over, insert our hook into the stitch, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Let's work 1 more double crochet together, yarn over, insert our hook into the same stitch because we need 2 stitches into this stitch, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 stitches, yarn over, pull through 2. And then we'll double crochet into the next stitch. We're still increasing here, and that's why in some cases we're working 2 stitches into 1 stitch. So far we have a single crochet into the first stitch, a half double crochet into the next stitch, 2 double crochets into the next stitch, 1 double crochet into the next stitch. We're going to repeat these last 3 stitches again, so 2 double crochets into the next stitch, then 1 double crochet into the next stitch. Now we're going to work a treble crochet. To work a treble crochet, we yarn over 2 times, insert our hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through. We have 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. We're going to want to work 1 more treble crochet into the same stitch, so yarn over 2 times, insert your hook into the same stitch, yarn over, pull through, 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That's 2 treble crochets into that next stitch, 1 treble crochet into the next stitch. In the next stitch, we're going to work a double crochet and a half double crochet. There's a double, and there's a half worked into the same stitch together. Then we'll single crochet into the next stitch. In the next stitch, we're going to slip stitch, insert our hook into that stitch, yarn over, pull through that stitch and the loop on our hook. Then we'll insert our hook back into that stitch and complete a single crochet. So we have a slip stitch and a single crochet into that stitch. That is the bottom. So this is where we started up here. We worked all the way around and now we're at the center bottom. That's where the slip stitch is, the center. And now we're just going to basically repeat this process that we just worked on the other side. Into the next stitch, we're going to half double crochet. Then we're going to single crochet into the next stitch, followed by a slip stitch in the same stitch. So that half double crochet is the actual center, and that's what helps us get this curve right here. Because when I designed this pumpkin, I wanted to have ridges and the shape. So that half double crochet is the actual center down here. So we've worked a half double crochet, and then in the next stitch, single crochet and slip stitch. In the next stitch, we're going to work a single crochet. In the next stitch, we're going to work a half double crochet and a double crochet. In the next stitch, we're going to work a treble crochet. In the next stitch, we're working 2 treble crochets. In the next stitch, we are working a double crochet. In the next stitch, 2 double crochets. In the next stitch, a double crochet. In the next stitch, 2 double crochets. A double crochet in the next stitch. 2 double crochets into the next stitch. A half double crochet into the next stitch. And a single crochet into that first stitch. Then we'll slip stitch join to the first. And the shape is coming together. One more round, and then we'll just work the stem. So round 4 begins with a chain 1. Then we're going to skip the first stitch, that stitch that our chain is right on top of. We're skipping that stitch. We're going to work a half double crochet into the next stitch. Double crochet into the next stitch. 2 double crochets into the next stitch. Double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. There's 1 and 2. We'll repeat those last 4 again. 2 double crochets into the next stitch. Double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Then we're going to work 2 treble crochets into the next stitch. Double crochet into the next stitch. And the following one as well. Then we're going to work a double crochet and a half double crochet into the next stitch. Single crochet into the next stitch. Slip stitch into the next stitch. Single crochet and half double crochet into the next stitch. I want to take a step back really quickly. Here there are where we're going to slip stitch, there is a stitch there. There's another stitch right next to it. After you work the half double crochet, it's hard to see that there's 2 stitches there. So just take note now, because it's going to be a little bit harder to insert your hook into that next stitch. So here's my slip stitch. Insert my hook into the next stitch under both of those loops. It's a tough one because that's where there was a slip stitch before. So in here we're going to single crochet. And half double crochet. In the next 2 stitches, half double crochet. Then we will single crochet and slip stitch into the next stitch. Single crochet into the next stitch. Half double crochet and double crochet into the next stitch. Double crochet into the next 2 stitches. Two treble crochets into the next stitch. Double crochet into the next 2 stitches. Two double crochets into the next stitch. Double crochet into the next 2 stitches. Two double crochets into the next stitch. Double crochet into the next 2 stitches. Two double crochets into the next stitch. One double crochet into the next stitch. One half double crochet into the next stitch. Chain 1. Slip stitch join to the beginning chain 1. So here's our first stitch and here's our chain. We want to insert our hook into the center of that chain, yarn over, pull through that stitch and the loop on our hook. And we did that so we can create this distance. That's why we skipped that first stitch to create a little hole, and then we chained here to create another little hole so we can work our stem into. Now we're going to fasten off our orange. We're done with it. And then I take that loop that I just finished working and I just pull all the way up to break it. Insert my hook into the same stitch it's coming from the back side though. Yarn over my tail end and just pull it through. That way I have it on the back side to weave in. Before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and work my stem. I'm looking at my pumpkin. I have one space here on the left and one space here on the right, and there's that centered chain. I want to work into these stitches that are right underneath those. So I'm going to begin here on the right side. There's a skip stitch here on the bottom. You can see that right here in the center is where that chain's coming from. Right to the right is an empty stitch. I'm going to insert my hook underneath both loops of that stitch, and I'm going to come out right above it into that hole. So the skipped stitch on the right, insert under both loops of that stitch, and come out the empty hole. I'm taking my brown yarn. I've created a loop here with a short tail end that I will weave in later. I'm going to put this loop on my hook and pull it through. Then I will hold the brown loop tension with my index finger on my right hand, and I'm holding the fabric so I can drop the tail end and pick up the working yarn. By dropping it, I just mean I'm not using it. I'm going to chain 1. Then I'm going to single crochet into the stitch that I have joined my yarn to. I'm not working over the chain 1 from round 4. I don't want that. I want to only pick up where my yarn has been attached to. So I'm going to insert my hook into the same stitch that I did before, and come out of the hole. Then I will yarn over, pull through, and complete my single crochet. And so we're looking now from the top. This is the chain 1 from round 4. I have not worked over that. I've just worked into the stitch underneath it. That brown tail, I'm just going to pull it to the back. Okay, so this is what we have. Now I'm going to single crochet into the center stitch. So here's where our chain is, and there's a stitch right underneath it. I'm going to insert my hook underneath, here's the chain, directly into the stitch where the chain is coming from, and I'm going to do it through the whole entire pumpkin, so it's coming out on the back side. Yarn over, pull through, and complete a single crochet. So the right stitch was not worked through the fabric, it's laying on top, but the center stitch is worked through the fabric. Then we'll work one more single crochet on top like we did before. On the left side, we can see where our first stitch is worked. We don't want to work into that stitch. We want to work into the one just to the left of the beginning chain. We're going to insert our hook in there, come out of the hole, yarn over, pull through, and complete a single crochet. So we have 3 stitches. The 2 top ones, the 2 end ones, they are worked on top of the fabric. The center one is worked over the fabric. This is what it looks like from the back. For row 6, chain 1 and turn. In row 6 we're going to be working 4 stitches, but we're going to be working into those 3 stitches that we worked previously. We're also going to be working into the pumpkin, so it's really going to be attaching the fabric there. So I'm going to insert my hook into the corresponding stitch from the pumpkin. Looking from the back side, or from the front side, the corresponding stitches are these ones here, right above the holes. So row 6 on the back side, I'm going to insert my hook into that. The corresponding one is the one that's right below you. It's natural to just insert your hook there. It's a little bit tougher because we're working from across the fabric, but I'm going to insert my hook into that stitch where the hole is, as well as into the very first stitch of the previous round. So I have chained 1 and turned, insert my hook into the first corresponding stitch where the hole is, then into the first stitch of the stem, yarn over, pull through both layers, and complete a single crochet. So now that side of the stem is connected to the fabric from the pumpkin. I'm going to work 2 single crochets into that next stitch of the stem, which is the center one. And for the last stitch, I'm going to do the same thing as the first. I'm going to insert it into the corresponding stitch from the orange part of the fabric, which is where that hole is. And it's corresponding, it's natural, it's just the next stitch. Insert into the loops from the orange pumpkin. Then, so that's into the first layer. Then I'm going to pick up the last stitch from my stem, which is a little bit harder to see. Then I will yarn over, pull through, and complete my single crochet. And I have 4 loops there. Chain 1 and turn. Row 7's easy, single crochet into each stitch across, making it just 4 single crochets. Then we fasten off our brown yarn, pull up the loop to break it, and all we have to do now is weave in our ends. And when we weave this one in, it'll kind of pull it around, which will give it a rounded edge. Alright, we have 4 ends to weave in on our pumpkin, so I just wanted to go over that. I have my tapestry needle here, my scissors. These are jewelry pliers. They're really helpful when you have tough yarn like cotton. So if you feel like you're pulling too hard, to prevent your thumb and your index finger from hurting from pulling, you can use these as a tool. I'm starting with the center ring. So I just threaded my tapestry needle. Here in the center, I'm going to weave my end in all the way around clockwise until I get back to where I started. And as I weave my ends in, I want to make sure that I'm working through the top layer only. That way when I flip it around from the right side, you can't see my needle. It means you're not going to see that thread pulling through there either. And here's where I started. I'm just going to go one stitch past that. And now that I'm back at where I started, I'm going to hold the fabric and pull on that tail end. Not too tight because the cotton yarn can tear, but tight enough that it closes up this gap. And now I'll secure it by weaving back in through my work. Excuse me. I like to do 3 passes. So I just came clockwise. I'm going to go counterclockwise, just under several stitches. First thing I'm going to do though is I'm going to go into a nearby stitch, but I'm not going to pick up the whole stitch. Let's see where I want to go in. Let's go in down here. And if I was going to pick up the whole stitch, I would go underneath and I would pick up the whole stitch. I don't want to pick up the whole stitch though. I want to break the stitch in half. So I'm just going to go in through the center of that stitch and then back through my work under several stitches. And when I come out, I'm also not going to pick up the whole stitch. I'm going to break the stitch in half. And by doing this, it helps capture my yarn a whole lot better. I'm going to take this opportunity to show you how to use your jewelry pliers, because working with Dishie yarn, I really don't have a lot of issues with it, but Lily Sugar and Cream, I use this all the time. When you use your jewelry pliers, you want to make sure that the eye of the needle is facing you. You can see down the eye of the needle, as opposed to if it's sideways and you can't. You want to make sure you see down the eye of the needle. That's going to pull through the smoothest. You can use the tips of the jewelry plier, or you can use, I don't know what this part is, but it flattens things out. That's the part that I'm using. And carefully, I'm holding the fabric with my left hand, carefully pull that needle through. I say carefully because if you pull too hard, you'll break the eye of the needle down at the bottom. So just be careful. That is a lifesaver when you have a lot of ends to weave in and the yarn is tough. Whether it's bulky or it's cotton, it's great. And I'm just working my 3rd pass the same way. And now I can fasten off. The orange tail, I'm going to try to hide it as best I can in the existing seam so it doesn't add extra bulkiness over here. I was going to say in restriction, but this doesn't stretch at all. It just adds extra bulkiness. So, excuse me, I'm just going vertically down several stitches, and I did go into a full stitch here, but I'm coming out of the center of a stitch. I'm breaking it as I come out. And then I'll break the next stitch that I go into as I go back up through my work. And I keep using my fingers to pull it flat because I don't want to create bulkiness where the fabric bunches up. I just want it to lay naturally flat. So I just use my fingers to gently pull on the fabric. 3 passes is my magic number. If you feel comfortable after 2, you can fasten off then. If you don't feel comfortable after 3, you can do another pass. I just think 3 back and forth is secure. For this brown, this is not the one we fastened off, this is the one we tied on. I'm going to go up through these orange stitches, up through the left side. And I just want to make sure that I don't get too close to the top because I still need to come back down. And if I were to go straight up like this, it would be fine, although it could create a larger gap there as it pulls up. So I'm going to go into the orange stitches that are on the side. And I'm only going through this top layer that's facing me, so I still can't see my needle through the right side. Otherwise you would see brown on top of orange. So you just want to make sure you're going through just the top layer. And then I'm going now under several brown. And again, it still pulled it, so I'm using my needle just to pull that fabric back down so it lays naturally. So I don't want a big gap right there. Now when I go back down, I don't want to go down the center of these stitches. That's why I said make sure you don't go too close to the top because it'll really pull down those stitches. This one feels tight, so I see the eye of the needle facing me, and I'm holding my fabric and I'm just gently pulling through carefully. That's the word. I have broken my needle, and then it tore my yarn, so just that's all I caution. One more tail end. This is the one we fastened off. I don't want it to pull down like this too much. I want it to naturally be rounded. So that's what I'm going to work on. And I'm going to do it by creating a loop, a chain loop that looks just like the ones on the top. But I'm going to create it here on the side. So I'm coming in through the back. We're looking at the back. Here's the top of my stitch. There's the back bump of it. Well, there's the back bump of the previous row, and there's the top of the stitch from the previous row. And you can see that there's like sort of a V right here. I'm going to go in through the middle of that V, working just on this side stitch. You can see it's just coming out of the side. And I'm pulling just to natural tension. If I pull too much, it'll make that stitch bend backwards. Then I'm going to take my needle. I'm going to take it up through the center of that top stitch. And then I'm just pulling my loops towards each other as I pull to normal tension. And then you can create what you see here. It's like, looks like a loose chain stitch. Or it'll match it perfectly, depends how far apart the bottom is. But there's my naturally rounded edge. And now I'm just going to weave the end in on the back side. And just be careful as you pull, because it will create like a V dip in this fabric up here. So just use your fingers as you go to make sure it lays exactly how you want it to look. And here you can see how it's dipped down. Just use your fingers just to flatten it out, pull it back out to normal tension. That's my third pass. I'm happy. I'm going to fasten off. And here's our little pumpkin coaster. Sew it on as an applique, use it as a coaster. This would be really cute as like a pocket on a little girl's dress. Written pattern is going to be at iloveknots.com. You'll find the link in the description below. Please smash that like button and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.